Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It's Season 3, Episode 46. Week 8 of the NFL football season is underway. Thursday Night Football having just concluded. We'll get to that in a moment. The Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the new-look Cleveland Browns with Baker Mayfield coming out of the bye week. We have plenty to talk about with that game, but first, because we didn't have enough time to get to it in our last episode, let's talk a little bit about some key games and storylines from last week in the NFL. Starting first and foremost with the London game, the 9:30 game. I get why the NFL does this, but I must say I have a huge problem with the inactive lists being released when they were. I was not able to replace Melvin Gordon in the lineup before because I was at work when it was announced on Sunday morning, and I lost a fantasy football matchup because of it. So I must say I'm very salty about that, and I just want to know what your thoughts were.
I think that the game should be moved to like 8 o'clock London time so that it makes it so it's a little bit, not even 8 o'clock, maybe it's like 6 o'clock because London's about 5 hours ahead of us. But like you got to think, like if you want to watch this game, if you're from California and you want to watch the Chargers play, you have to be up at 6:30 a.m. That's ridiculous. Like that's terrible. Like I understand opening your market, but like you need to feed to the people back at home. So I would recommend starting London games at like 6:30 or 7 or even 6 because with a 5-hour difference, for us, if it starts at 6, it starts at 1 p.m., which is normal. And then for everywhere else, it starts, for like California, it starts at 11 a.m. Like that's I'm sorry, I can't do math, 10 a.m. It starts at 10 a.m., which is normal for like a 1 p.m. game. It typically starts then for them. It starts 3 hours before us. So I feel like they make a mistake. 9:30 a.m., oh boy, it's 2:30 there. It's 2:30 in London. I feel like they should make it later. I don't understand why they have to make it in the afternoon, if I'm being honest with you.
And as far as the game itself goes, Mike Vrabel is an idiot. And I get why he did what he did, but he had 2 chances to kick the PAT to go for overtime, and instead he went for 2, and the Titans lost. And not only did they not use Dion Lewis, they used Marcus Mariota throwing into the end zone when they were a yard away, which is just completely idiotic, and they absolutely deserve to lose in my mind. So, way to go. Do you second my opinion?
I do second your opinion. I feel a lot of people stuck up for going for 2 because, I mean, their defense is bad, but I don't know. I'd rather go into overtime and have a chance than instead of making a break in right there. And also, I don't get why they didn't run. It's stupid.
Patriots at Bears. The Bears nearly pull off the miracle play to attempt to tie it. I didn't even see it happen until the next day, but Kevin White nearly scores a touchdown there, but the Patriots hold on. They get their first win of the season. Bills at Colts. The Colts steamrolled poor Derek Anderson and the Buffalo Bills, who look like the worst team in football again. Is there any hope for Buffalo if they can't beat the Colts and get slaughtered by them?
No. The Bills season, they're in rebuild mode. They need Josh Allen back. I mean, they should honestly just leave Josh Allen out and just wait for next year and let them build their team up around him because they are a bad team right now.
The Lions come away with a win on the road against the Dolphins, who were just in action up until a few minutes ago. Vikings defeat the Jets in New Jersey. The Panthers with the last-second win over the Eagles. That had to be a pretty sweet moment for you because it looked like my pick was going to be right and yours was not. And then in the final seconds, Cam Newton leads the Panthers down the field for the winning touchdown. Really a good game too, I might add. Did you get a chance to check it out at all?
The Eagles really blew it in that one. They were up 17 in the fourth quarter, I believe, or it was 17 or 14, and then just blew it. The Panthers came out and just rallied. I was happy that I got it right, but I was versing the guy who had Cam Newton in fantasy, and he had like 11 points going into the fourth quarter, and then he ended with 40 because he just went off. And was disappointing for me.
Also, I'd like to point out that 21-17 games are exciting, case in point this game, so don't forget about that. Buccaneers beat the Browns in overtime. The Browns waiting for 3 quarters to start playing offense was not enough. What's wrong with the Jaguars right now? They just got smoked again for, what was this, the 3rd straight loss, 4th straight loss? They got absolutely smoked by the Texans at home, 20-7.
They're in trouble. that's what they're versus the Eagles this upcoming week, and they're in trouble. I don't know what's going on with them. Well, actually, I do. Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles is a bad quarterback, and it took a while for us to get back to saying this, that Bortles is bad. And I for a little while, everyone eased off, and I said, okay, he was manageable. He got to the playoffs. He beat the Steelers in the playoffs, and then he started this year, and he was doing decently, but then he just started doing terrible. And this was Bortles. This is how he is. The Jaguars need to move on from this quarterback. They even started to. They put in Cody Kessler for the end of that game to try and get something going. And it did get a little bit more than when Bortles was in, but they don't have the quarterback of the future on their roster right now. They need to either get one in the draft, they need to trade one for one in the next 5 days or so. It's not looking good for them if they don't fix up their quarterback situation. And then also their defense has been playing to make up for it. Like last year, Bortles would have a bad game, but the defense would be keeping them in it. This year, they aren't Saxonville. They aren't getting all the sacks they did last year. They really don't have that many. They're still a pretty good defense in terms of yards given up. I mean, the points given up right now is really bad, but so that's like their main issue. They have a lot of issues going on right now. I think the defense is going to fix it up, but the offense is going to be a problem until Leonard Fournette comes back, basically. I don't know if Carlos Hyde is the answer. What do you think of the Jaguars?
Well, make no mistake, the problems with the Jaguars are very extensive, and it's not just Blake Bortles. He's the biggest problem, yes, but there are issues everywhere, and the defense has been chief among them as well. They've just been kind of good, and kind of good in today's NFL means you're not good. And they've just been getting torched by their standards, at least. They haven't been getting after the quarterback, like you said. The locker room appears to be in disarray from a 30,000-foot view. And I don't think Leonard Fournette's really going to change that much. I'm still not even sold on him being that great of a player. Yeah, he had great games against the Steelers the last 2 years, but the way he runs, it's so physical. This is why I stayed away from him in fantasy football this year, and why I advised Will to trade him early this year, is that he runs he's such a physical runner. He doesn't avoid contact. He's not going to have a long career in the NFL. And he looks good when he plays, yes, but how much longer is he going to play? He's already missed so much time just this year. He's not going to have a long shelf life with the way he plays. Someone that played very similar, although much far less talented, was Thomas Rawls. Rawls had like one good year when he was with the Seahawks, and it was just absolutely punishing. And I remember there was a game against the Steelers where the announcers kept saying, this running style is not something you can do over the course of 10 years. He's not going to last. And sure enough, Rawls faded, and I expect the same to happen to Fournette at some point. But I mean, he's not going to fix this team when he comes back. You know, they have problems with injuries at receiver. But basically everyone's playing bad right now. That's what it comes down to. And Bortles is supposed to, the quarterback is supposed to be the guy that leads you out of the storm. He's been the one leading them into the storm. So I think it was a mistake the Jaguars didn't take Lamar Jackson back in the draft. And I think that's become quite clear. It's become quite clear that was a mistake to extend Bortles and not draft Jackson. Moving on, the Saints come away with a huge victory on the road against the Ravens, who I thought were going to win. Drew Brees becomes the 3rd quarterback to beat all 32 NFL teams, and it was quite in spectacular fashion. They took the lead late, and then the Ravens appeared ready to tie the game. Then Justin Tucker misses his first career PAT. I didn't believe it with my own eyes. I had to pinch myself. It was quite an amazing. I remember I texted to you too, like he missed it. It was crazy, and I almost still don't believe that it happened.
Yeah, this is another example of a low-scoring game that was a really good game. And this is what we're pushing for, people. Good defense and good offense can coexist at the same time. Anyway, Yeah, this was a really good game from start to finish. I felt like both teams were in it for the most part. And I'm glad that the Saints came out with it because it put the Steelers at top of their division because they won.
Rams at 49ers was a crushing blowout, 39-10. The Cowboys and Redskins fight for the NFC East went in favor of the Redskins. The Cowboys missing a long field goal as time expired. Boy, another crucial penalty in the waning moments there for the Cowboys. That was almost comical, wasn't it?
Yeah, their poor long snapper, man. I mean, it was his fault, so I guess I shouldn't say poor, but probably everyone was looking at him like, damn, bro, you really messed this up for us because you got that crucial penalty right at the end. But, yeah, I was a little bit surprised. I thought that the Cowboys would end up winning, but I guess it is what it is. That division's all trash.
The Chiefs massacre the Bengals 45-10. It felt like the Bengals were never in it, and Cincinnati's fading fast, and the Chiefs are staying on strong as favorites in the AFC. I know the Patriots beat them in Foxborough in a very close matchup. Is there anyone else that can beat Kansas City right now?
I honestly don't think so. I don't think that there's another really good team besides, like, the Rams. Like, that's it. I mean, they do get to verse the Rams soon, too, but, like, on the AFC side, I don't see anyone on the AFC that can do it. I mean, Steelers are the only ones that even got close, and it was 5 points so far. So, I mean, other than the Patriots, I mean, who obviously did beat them, but honestly, the Rams are like the only other team that I think could beat them, but we'll even see. We get to see that matchup later. I think it's next week.
The only teams I think have a chance, these are the teams I could see maybe winning, a few times, like maybe like if they played 5 times, they could beat them at least one out of those 5 times. I could see the Patriots, obviously, the Steelers being one of those teams, maybe, the Ravens possibly, and maybe the Chargers. That's probably it. I think that's a pretty good list right there.
Yeah, not terrible, but still, it's just like not the Rams. The Chiefs are playing at such a high level. It's hard to say that they would lose to anyone, really.
And their defense did step up in this past game. And then Monday Night Football, the Falcons win over the Giants. Have you ever seen the final minute of a game so poorly mismanaged with clock management than the Giants at the end of that game?
I just think the Giants mismanaged their whole entire existence. That is the quote for the Giants the past 2 seasons, mismanaging their entire existence.
All right, on to Thursday Night Football this week. Having just concluded within the past hour, the Houston Texans win their 5th straight game fifth straight game in general, by beating the Miami Dolphins, who fall to 4-4 by a final score of 42-23. A lot going on in this game. Deshaun Watson, 5 touchdown passes in this game. Or was it just 5 touchdowns in total? I believe it was 5 touchdown passes. Let's see.
5 touchdown passes.
He was dynamic. So was DeAndre Hopkins, obviously. The Dolphins just couldn't keep up. And another big win for the Texans, and another win for a Thursday night team at home, the Giants being the only team that haven't done that so far. The favored team on Thursday night has, I believe they've covered in every week this year too, by the way. So that's an important trend to look at going forward. In Steelers news over the bye week, the big news was no news, and the fact that Le'Veon Bell did not report during the bye week like he was expected to do. Again, expected by media members, but he never did. Now he's not anticipated to return anytime before the trading deadline, so he isn't traded. What do you think is going to happen with Bell? Does he show up at some point this year? Does he not show up? And then, what's going to happen from there?
He's got to show up, right? Like, if he doesn't report by week 10, he's stuck with the Steelers on the franchise tag at the $14.5 million franchise tag that we had this past season. So it's like he's got to move on, right? Unless he's betting on the Steelers. All right, I'm going to just stick with them, and then they're going to pull off the tag. And I don't know. I don't know why he wouldn't just report this season and then just know he's going to be a free agent this season. My guess is he's got to be coming sometime before week 10. If he doesn't show up before week 10, I'll be surprised. But, I mean, this season has been full of surprises. We were told he was showing up for the start of the season. We were told he was showing up by, like, week 6. We were told he was showing up week 10. We were told he was showing up for the bye week. We were told he was showing up for Monday. Nothing reported is going to be real until we see it with our own eyes. Until Le'Veon Bell says himself that he has walked into the building and is now with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I am not listening to anyone's reports. I don't care what they say. They could say they talked to Le'Veon Bell to his face and have it on recording that he said it. I'm not going to believe it till he's there, because he also said he wasn't doing anything different from last year. And then Jeremy Fowler said that he spoke to him directly and said he was showing up Monday, and neither of those things happened. So I don't really know what's going to go on with Le'Veon Bell, but I just expect him before week 10. What do you think happens with Le'Veon Bell?
I almost think he's just not going to show up at all, and he's going to bet on the Steelers not franchise tagging him again so they don't have to go through the same nonsense they just went through this year. I think if that happens, the Steelers place the transition tag on him, give him a tender, allow other teams to make offers for him. You can match it if you want, or you can just let him go and get draft compensation for it. And I think that's the best move that can happen for the Steelers, and I think that's what's going to happen because it just seems more and more like Bell is less and less interested in reporting at all. And with the way the team acted when he didn't show up, I don't think he's in a rush to get back at all. So, but I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine because this is honestly such a unique situation. We have no idea what's going on. On to the game, Steelers and Browns. Quite a lengthy history here. The Steelers, as we know, lead the series 74 wins to 58 losses and one tie. The one tie coming in the most recent game back in week 1, which means the streak is one tie for both teams. The Steelers have won both postseason games, and the fun fact for this time is the past 6 matchups, the Steelers have gotten after the Browns quarterback at a high rate. Going back to the season finale in 2015, which now spans 6 games, the Steelers have sacked the Browns quarterback an average of 6.5 times in those games for an average yards lost of 48.3 yards per game. And they also sacked Tyrod Taylor 7 times in the season opener, so that's a number to look out for going into this game. Take a look at the injury reports for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's, again, a pretty short one. Morgan Burnett practiced in full today with his groin injury, so it looks like he might be able to play for the first time since week 2. LJ Fort was a full participant with his ankle injury, so it looks like he will be returning. Xavier Grimble practiced in full after being limited yesterday. Darius Hayward-Bay was also a full participant. The only person that did not practice due to an injury was Marcus Gilbert with a surprising knee injury. He popped up on Wednesday, and he also didn't practice on Thursday, so it's looking like he's not going to play. What are your thoughts on Gilbert's potential absence?
I think that's going to hurt the running game a lot because I felt like he's been one of the Steelers' better run blocking offensive players. But I feel like they'll still move on without him. They'll be fine in the long run. I would have been more worried if Villanueva was out, to be honest with you, because that's on Myles Garrett's side. But, I mean, it's a loss nonetheless. And having Matt Filer start or Chuck Okorafor start instead of Marcus Gilbert isn't ideal, but, I mean, it's doable. So what do you think?
The only thing I hope that doesn't happen is that the Browns decide to move Garrett over to that side just to get the favorable matchup. That's the only thing I'm really concerned about. For the Browns, though, they have an extensive list of players that didn't practice, including E.J. Gaines, the defensive back with a concussion, wide receiver Rashard Higgins with a knee injury, Demarius Randall with both a groin and an ankle injury, C.J. Treader with an ankle injury, and linebacker Joe Schobert with a hamstring injury. A lot going on there, and a lot of those guys are important, especially some of those defensive guys. We'll get into that in a little bit. But first, let's talk about the Browns a little bit. And as you might remember, I had my buddy John Gehring on for an interview before the Steelers opener this season. And I decided to talk with him again about this game. You can find that on our YouTube page. John talked a little bit about the Browns and 2 players that he was looking out for on his end that he figured would be kind of important X factors for them and how they would play on Sunday. For the Browns defense, he picked Denzel Ward. Remember, he had 2 interceptions of Ben Roethlisberger in the opening game.
Denzel Ward, I believe, is going to be the most critical player on the defense in this game because, yes, the defensive line does need to get some pressure on Roethlisberger, but ultimately the Steelers have a lot of speed, especially at receiver, and our secondary, already without Gaines and already without Randall, as you said, somebody's going to have to step up, and they're going to have to throw in a couple of other cornerbacks who have been a little bit shaky at best, like Brian Body Calhoun.
Of the season. So looking at the Steelers offense, you got a chance to listen to the soundbite of what he said about Ward. What do you think about how important Denzel Ward is to the defense? And I guess what does the Steelers offense do in this game differently than they did in the last game? Because they did move the ball well in week 1, but 6 turnovers, you can't win that way. So just go right ahead.
I undermined Ward in his first career game because he was a rookie. We hadn't seen much from him, but we definitely got to see how he really was in that first game. And now, after a few games this season, we've heard what he's been doing. We've seen what he's been doing. He looks pretty good. He looks like he's living up to the draft hype. At first, a lot of people thought he went a little too high. He was projected more into like picks 8, 9, 10, but the Browns got him, and it looks actually like a good decision. He played really well against Brown and also got 2 picks, so he definitely makes sense as John's defensive X factor, especially with Schobert and Randall being out. Schobert, I think, is the biggest loss to them, though. He's been the Browns' playmaker and a great tackler, and without him, Kirksey's moving to his spot, and Jannard Avery is playing in Kirksey's normal spot now. So a lot of shifting going on with the Browns' defense because of this one move. Jannard Avery is looking pretty good so far this year. He has the top grade of a rookie edge defender on Pro Football Focus. And I'm going to say this and not set it in stone because I don't remember. I feel like Jannard Avery was my favorite pre-draft rookie. I think I made him number 1 because a little fun fact about him, if you guys don't remember, he was a bodybuilder. He was a professional one, and he's very strong, and I thought he'd be very good to work with. And so far, the Browns are working with him perfectly, and he's been developing pretty well with all his strengths. So it's kind of sad to see, but I mean, I saw it coming, I guess I could call it. But without I still believe it's a downgrade from Schobert, regardless. So that should bode well for James Conner if he can get past the defensive line the same way he did the first game, which I feel pretty confident about, to be honest with you, with how banged up the defense is now and how he performed the first time. Also, Juju Smith-Schuster's matchup looks favorable, with E.J. Gaines likely out with a concussion. And since the first matchup, Terrence Mitchell has been placed on IR. So after Ward, those were like their 2 best cornerbacks, at least in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of T.J. Carey, so I used it very sparingly because I thought Terrence Mitchell was trash too, but I thought he was better than T.J. Carey. But those were his best options. But that's not even it. You need to factor in that they'll likely be out there starting safety Demarius Randall too. So really, this should be the Juju show. Really, though, it should be anyone not named Antonio Brown shows because all the matchups are favorable besides since he's going to be matched up with Denzel Ward. But Vance, Jesse James, Switzer, and Washington should all get their portion in this game. I really am looking at Washington, though, because if there's a game to break out, it's this one, I believe. So keep your eyes on him. Now, let me get to the matchup I'm worried about. For the Browns, there's only one unit on the defense that I felt like got better since the Steelers burst in the first time, and that is their defensive line. Myles Garrett has been a continued wrecking force for the Browns, and he's a scary dude. I feel like he did pretty good in the first matchup, but now I feel like him and especially the guys playing next to him have gotten better since that game. Ogunjobi has been a force for them, getting 4 sacks himself, and also Agba, I felt like, has played better as well from the first game. So I'm a bit worried about them, but I do have confidence in the offensive line as they put up insane numbers in the past 2 games with no sacks. But unfortunately, it's going to be hard to keep Myles Garrett, who has 7 sacks on the year, from getting one. But if there's anyone to try it, it's the Steelers' offensive line. But going back, I wanted to talk about Ward. What did you think about Ward being John's defensive X factor? How do you feel like he's played into the Browns' defense?
Well, he definitely projects to be an important part of their defense, especially with the secondary being banged up. The play of Ward is going to be critical for the Browns if they're going to pull off a win this week. The Steelers moved the ball pretty well in week 1, but struggled mightily with sloppy play and turnovers, Ward with 2 interceptions of his own. Since then, we've seen both good and bad play from the Browns defense. While they aren't statistically a great unit as far as yards and points against, they've done a great job in terms of getting after the opposing quarterback and taking the ball away. I personally have always preferred having a bend but don't break defense that gets a lot of sacks and turnovers as opposed to a unit that doesn't give up a lot of yards and doesn't come up with big plays either. The Browns have a dangerous defense and have to be respected, especially up front. The edge rushers have been so good, especially Myles Garrett. Garrett has 7 sacks on the season and has clearly become the elite defensive force we all thought he was going to be. Even in a game where he wasn't getting consistent pressure, see the Week 1 game against the Steelers, he still made 3 or 4 huge plays that changed the game, which made you think he played amazing. He's the best player on this team and has to be accounted for. Emmanuel Ogbah, as you mentioned, has 4 sacks on his own and enjoys getting one-on-one battles with Myles Garrett demanding so much attention. That pass rush has allowed guys like Jamie Collins and Joe Schobert to become playmaking linebackers in the back end there. But Schobert, as you mentioned, likely to miss Sunday's game, forcing Jannard Avery and Christian Kirksey into more playing time. They look a little weaker than they have been earlier this season. The secondary, though, obviously, besides Ward, is ripe for the picking. With Demarius Randall and E.J. Gaines possibly both missing this game, the Browns will basically just be Ward and company on the back end. The Steelers should be aggressive and should throw the ball early and often to test these reserve defensive backs of the Browns. Even if Denzel Ward, quote-unquote, shuts down Antonio Brown, if you could make that argument that he did last time, he still had 9 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown. I think the Steelers' matchups, like Austin said, with other receivers is very good. The tight ends and running backs are also favorable. And you mentioned Juju. He should have a big day. Vance McDonald should have a big day. Jesse James also had 60 yards in the opener, too. But it's still going to be important for Randy Fichtner to stay with the ground game like he did in Week 1. If the Steelers are too pass-happy, it could make their tendencies a little easier to predict, which means Garrett and Ogbah are going to have easier days on the outside, especially with Marcus Gilbert possibly missing this game. Don't abandon the running game and make sure James Conner gets his touches and carries. He had 192 total yards in the first matchup, and I hope he gets another 25 to 30 touches in this game. The offense has come into itself as a top 10 unit the last few weeks, and after coming off the bye, facing a banged-up defense, I'd expect them to have their way for the most part against the Browns. Even though they have taken the ball away a lot, the Steelers just have to be... They don't have to force the issue. They will have options. The other side of the football, the Browns' offense is quite clearly different than what the Steelers saw in Week 1. Notable wide receiver Josh Gordon has been shipped out. Baker Mayfield is now the quarterback as Tyrod Taylor has been benched. And as John mentioned, with Carlos Hyde being traded as well, Nick Chubb is now the leading guy in Cleveland as the running back. So a few different faces in just a couple of months. Chubb seemed to be the guy that John picked besides Mayfield as being an important guy to look for. What do you think about him? And what do you think about the Browns' new offense?
I'm still keeping a very close eye on Nick Chubb, and that's not to take anything away from the importance of the offensive line, because, of course, you can't have a running game without an offensive line. But Chubb is relatively new, and this is going to be his second game as the lead running back. And Duke Johnson is also, an important running back on our team, but he tends to line up sometimes in the slot, only comes in on third downs at times. So Nick Chubb is the guy. I mean, he's the back that's taking the majority of the snaps there. So I'm going to keep an eye on Nick Chubb to see how much progress he makes from last week, which was really encouraging, to this week. And, of course, the offensive line is going to make a big difference in this one, and their play is going to largely determine how he does. But since he's a speed back that likes to get to the edges, and they're definitely going to have him very much involved.
Well, I feel like I'm actually not as worried about Chubb as I was about Hyde. And my reason is this. I feel like in the first matchup, people were writing Hyde off and not really thinking of him as a threat. But now I feel like with Chubb, the Steelers are actually prepared for him because they've seen him be dangerous and in the few snaps he's gotten. I feel like the Steelers should be more prepared for him because I just feel like there's more genuine worry about Nick Chubb than there was about Carlos Hyde. But I personally think Jarvis Landry is going to be the biggest X factor for the Browns, especially with how the Steelers defense has played the past couple of weeks. I felt that the defense has been really good against the run, and still end up giving most of the plays for the air for the most part. So I feel like Jarvis Landry is the guy to watch for the Browns. I mean, if Hayden ends up shadowing him, he may not put up that much after Hayden has handled his man pretty well the past 2 weeks. But I actually don't expect Hayden to shadow him in this game. He's just not Julio or A.J. Green caliber, where I think the Steelers will deem it necessary to have Hayden follow him around. I feel like Hayden would be more useful just following around with whoever he's lined up with. We will see, though. I think Landry and Callaway are both pretty much at the same level, so it's going to be interesting to see what the Steelers do in terms of coverage. I think where the Steelers have a huge advantage on defense is against the Browns' offensive line. The Browns' offensive line is one of the worst in the league, allowing 31 sacks and 50 quarterback hits, which is worst and sixth in the worst in the league, respectively. That bodes well for the pass rush, which has been inconsistent, but still one of the best sacking defenses in the league. And as John mentioned, the Steelers have averaged 6.5 sacks in the past 6 matchups. So look for Cameron Hayward to bounce back here, T.J. Watt to contribute again, and guys like Stephon Tuitt and Javon Hargrave to build on last game's performance. If this team doesn't get at least 4 sacks this game, I'm going to be very disappointed. Now I want to circle back and talk about some guys I haven't really talked about. Starting with the safeties, I think we will actually see Morgan Burnett actually come back and play after practicing fully on Thursday. But who knows how many snaps he will play, if he even comes back. Watch them be surprised if tomorrow he just does not participate in practice, tomorrow being Friday when we're recording this. But I actually think Edmonds is going to play more in an attempt not to rush Burnett back after not playing quite a few games now. I just feel like it wouldn't be the smart thing to do with Burnett hardly having many snaps of defense. Like, it's just, he hasn't really gotten that practice. And even in the preseason, he hurt himself then. He hasn't really been able to get the snaps of defense in practice. But I think Edmonds will do fine. I don't really have a reason to worry. He's improved in the past 2 games from the beginning of the season. Same for Sean Davis. I feel like the Browns wide receivers just aren't as scary anymore without the threat of Josh Gordon. So I feel pretty confident in the player safeties in this one in terms of coverage. Next, I want to talk about the inside linebackers. Boston had a quiet game last game, but now against the Browns, I totally expect them to put up more on the stat sheet. And that may cut into Vince Williams' stats. And I do think Vince does well here as well. It's another good matchup in terms of inside linebacker blitzing, so I'm hoping one of them gets a sack in this one. It would be nice to see again after Vince got one last week. But I want to circle back again and ask you about Chubb. And what do you think about Chubb going into this game? Is he something to worry about?
Well, Chubb is certainly an interesting player to look at. The thought was when Hyde was acquired that Chubb was kind of going to be a guy that touched the ball sparingly. He was going to get stronger. He was going to be molded a bit into the back that the Browns wanted him to be. But then the future came early with Hyde being shipped to Jacksonville for a 5th-round pick. Hyde, in my mind, was a better and more consistent runner, especially up the middle. And he didn't break a ton of big plays, but he was a reliable guy. Chubb, on the other hand, is a more explosive and physical runner, and he's kind of a mix between the scat-back Duke Johnson and the plowing Carlos Hyde. Chubb isn't proven or necessarily polished as a runner, especially, as I mentioned, between the tackles. He hasn't run well up the middle, which is something the Steelers should be looking forward to. That's something that could be limiting for an offense that needs a consistent rushing attack in order to take the load off for Baker Mayfield. Chubb has been better on outside runs, so the Steelers have to be ready for that. I don't know if they run zone running plays, but knowing the Steelers that they haven't been good at stopping that in years past, I'd run that. Speaking of Baker Mayfield, his play starting in Week 3 when he replaced Tyrod Taylor just injected a spark into the Browns' offense. Even though it hasn't been pretty at times, there is no doubt that Mayfield is a guy that will make things happen, even if they're bad things. Taylor made some plays, but he was far too conservative for this offense. Mayfield will at least try to make some of the more dangerous plays, and at times this year it's paid off for the Browns. It will be interesting to me to see what he does against an inconsistent defensive secondary. I expect to see a lot of Jarvis Landry in this game. That's Mayfield's favorite target, and more good play from David Njoku, Antonio Callaway, and Rashard Higgins, who will be sprinkled into the offense. Last and maybe least is the offensive line. As you mentioned, Austin, they've really struggled in pass protection this year. Whether it be Mayfield or Taylor, the quarterbacks have been sacked a combined 31 times, which is the most in the league. And mind you, both those guys are relatively mobile guys. Carlos Hyde averaged just 3.4 yards per carry before being traded as well, so the offensive line wasn't even blocking that well for him either. this certainly looks like the weakness of the offense too. As I said before, the Steelers sacked Taylor 7 times in week 1. And even though Baker tends to throw the ball a little bit faster, the Browns' struggles in pass protection and the fact that he hasn't seen a lot of defenses yet, I'm talking about Mayfield, it leads me to believe that Keith Butler could be in the rookie's head and have his head spinning with some of these exotic blitzes we're used to him seeing. I, for one, can't wait for it. The defensive line should once again dominate the line of scrimmage as they have typically the past few years. I'm expecting big games from all 3 of them. Not necessarily sacks, but consistent pressure and a presence in the backfield that we're just used to seeing. I expect big games from the outside linebackers. Nobody likes playing the Browns more than TJ Watt. He has 3 sacks this season already against the Browns from the opener. And in 3 career games against the Browns, he has 6.5 sacks. So look out. Bud Dupree had a strip sack in the opener as well, and John Bostic was a force with the sack of his own too. I think they'll all have good days, but they can't let Baker Mayfield make throws from outside of the pocket, and they have to set the edge on the outside. If they don't do that, then Nick Chubb could have a big day. My only real concern with the defense, though, lies in the secondary, obviously. Joe Hayden should lock down his side of the field that he's on, and I expect Mike Hilton will be his normal disruptive self. But the safeties and the cornerback opposite Hayden are the question mark, as they have been all season. They have to know they're going to be tested early and often. Tyrod Taylor barely threw deep in week 1, and the few times he did, outside of a horribly underthrown ball that was picked off by Cameron Sutton, Taylor had success. Whether it be Cody Sensabaugh or Cameron Sutton, I think Artie Burns, by the way, is going to be on the bench for most of this game, so he can kind of reset. I think that cornerback will be picked on a lot. The safeties in Davis and Edmonds weren't that bad in week 1, but they also weren't tested much. I would hope that Edmonds is closer to the line of scrimmage, where his natural position calls for him to be, and not deep like he was against the Ravens when he got burned. I just want Davis back there dealing with those deep passes. Again, I think the Steelers have a favorable matchup here, especially on the defensive front, but the secondary has been and will continue to be a question mark. And yes, of course, Baker Mayfield is the ultimate X factor, but John decided to go with Chubb just so that he could be straying a little bit from the status quo. But Mayfield is the guy that makes the plays that Tyrod Taylor couldn't. So it's definitely a different offense than we saw in week 1. Some new faces on special teams too, by the way. You want to talk a little bit about them?
New face on special teams. You mean like Greg Joseph or the Browns? Yeah, the Browns have changed it up a little bit since the Steelers first versus them. They cut their kicker and brought in Greg Joseph. And honestly, if they had Greg Joseph, they probably would have beat the Steelers. But I mean, that's all semantics because the Steelers could have done a few things that would have ended up beating the Browns. But really, what I'm looking for in this game is I'm hoping to see Boswell hit some of those nice field goals in this game, quality ones. I mean, not those less than 40 yards ones that we saw him hit 2 weeks ago against the Bengals. I want to really see that he's returned to form this season because we don't really know if he has yet. We haven't really got him to see anything over a 40-yard field goal. He hasn't made one yet this season. Really, I want to see Boswell return. That's that. What do you have to say about special teams?
Well, just besides the actual the specialists first, as far as the Browns' return game goes, Jabril Peppers has been the guy. He's been a pedestrian kick returner, but he's been a much better punt returner than he was last season. He's averaging nearly 3 yards more per punt return this year compared to last year. Last year was only about 6 yards. This year, closer to 9. Looking at now the punter Britton Colquitt's numbers, I believe that the Browns' coverage teams, as far as punt coverage, have not been good. Colquitt is averaging 44.9 yards per punt, which, mind you, is better than Jordan Berry, so he's kicking the ball further than Berry, but his net average is lower than Jordan Berry's, almost a full yard lower than Jordan Berry's at 38.2. That tells me Colquitt is booming the ball, but the Browns' coverage teams have allowed some big returns. It could be a big game for Ryan Switzer, who enjoyed a nice debut with the Steelers in the first game. You mentioned Greg Joseph, the new kicker. He's only missed 2 kicks in total. One of his 9 field goals have been missed and only 1 PAT. So the kicking game has been better, but the punt coverage teams haven't been good. What are the keys to the game for the Steelers to win?
On offense, it's going to be to get out in front quick. The Browns are a team not built for making a comeback, so I think scoring quickly and getting up first will be a big deal in this game. For defense, it's going to be keeping Mayfield under pressure. There should be no reason for not having consistent pressure in this game with how bad the Browns' offensive line has been playing. So they need to be forcing the rookie into making bad decisions and hopefully getting interceptions since they haven't had one for a few weeks now. What are your offensive and defensive keys?
We both kind of alluded to this, and you said it. Don't lock on Antonio Brown. Make it the anybody but Antonio Brown show on Sunday. In the opener, Ben Roethlisberger was guilty at times of targeting Antonio Brown when he wasn't really open, and especially in the first interception to Denzel Ward, he was triple covered. I think Roethlisberger has shown confidence in other receiving options more often since then, so as long as he continues to go in other directions if Brown is covered, I don't see the Steelers having any struggles on offense. I mean, besides blocking pass rushers on the edge wherever Myles Garrett is, whether that be against Villanueva or Filer/Okorafor, I think the offense should have a good day. On defense, it's contain the ground game. Don't let Nick Chubb or Duke Johnson break off a long run. As is often the case with young quarterbacks, they are much better when they're supported by a strong running game. Carlos Hyde wasn't a big play guy, but Hyde is gone. He was a consistent player that's gone. Chubb doesn't have a lot of tape, but he seems like more of a boom or bust kind of runner. All it takes is a couple of big runs, though, and either of these guys could really set up some big things for the offense. Mayfield is strong off of play action, and count on him testing the defensive backs deep in this one as well. Who are your X factors going into this game?
My X factors are I'm going to pick Villanueva for offense because he's unfortunate enough to have to face Myles Garrett. I wish him luck because he's going to be the difference maker in this one if he could keep Myles Garrett and his 7 sacks contained. As for defense, it's Sean Bostic. I feel like he could be a difference maker in this one after having a quiet game in the last game. So I feel like he's going to bounce back and have a big game here. Who are your offensive and defensive keys?
On offense, I have Juju Smith-Schuster. In the opening, Smith-Schuster had 5 catches on 8 targets for 119 yards. Assuming the Browns try to bracket AB, which one would expect them to do, look for Smith-Schuster to enjoy another huge performance as we've seen from him most of this season. I think he's primed for a big day. On defense, I'm going with Vince Williams. Williams might have played his best game of the season in the last game against the Bengals. He was solid. Rushing the passer, he got a sack. He stopped the run pretty well, and he covered Joe Mixon pretty well, who's no scrub at all. Nick Chubb isn't as proven, but according to John, he's a big play threat. So if Williams is indeed tasked with covering Chubb, he needs to be ready for him to bounce it outside on runs, and he has to be ready for him to take some wheel routes deep. All right, we just earlier talked about the Thursday night football game, the Texans coming away with the win over the Dolphins. Let's move on to another London game, 9:30. Do not forget to set your fantasy football lineups the day before. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2 teams struggling. The Eagles getting 3 points. I know Blake Bortles has played well in London. I know the Jaguars have been good in London the last few years, but this just feels different, and the Super Bowl champions are going to come out swinging, and I think they win pretty handily.
I'm going to agree with you. A.J. Boyd has been ruled out, and that basically took any chance I had for the Jaguars winning. I think the Eagles cover this quite handily.
Lay the 3 points. On to the 1 o'clock slate. The 3-4 Denver Broncos coming off the big Thursday night win over the Arizona Cardinals. They go to Kansas City, one of the teams that played the Chiefs relatively well early on in the season on Monday Night Football. The Chiefs still came away with the win, but I don't know. The Chiefs are getting 10 points at home. That seems like a large spread here, but I don't know how you feeling about this one.
I'm having the Chiefs cover because I felt like the major difference the first time they met was that the Broncos were at home. They are not at home anymore. I think that the Chiefs actually do cover and beat the Broncos because they're a bad team, even if they're in the division. What do you have?
Did you know that this is the first time the Chiefs have been double-digit favorites all year?
Really? That's honestly a surprise. I guess, they had pretty tough matchups, I suppose.
Yeah, it is interesting because at the same time, the Chiefs have been so explosive offensively, but their defense has been so bad. I'm not confident in this, but I'm going to take the Chiefs to cover the 10-point spread, but I'm not feeling super confident about it. This could be one of those wacky games. Redskins at 4-2 at the 1-6 Giants. This is a coin flip game. Who are you picking to win?
I'm picking the Redskins to win. I think that the Giants are playing for that number 1 overall pick currently, so I'm having the Redskins win it.
I agree with you, Austin. I'm going to pick the Redskins to win this one. I think I'm really shocked they aren't favored in this one. Is there a reason that I'm missing here?
I don't really know. I would have probably picked the Redskins by, 4, even though that they're not at home. It's interesting to me that they decided because it's a divisional game and because it has the Giants house that it's been a coin flip game. I really don't know.
Very bizarre. I would have picked the Redskins as well. 3-3 Seahawks at the 3-3 Lions. Detroit getting 3 points. Give me the Lions, lay the points. I have been a believer in the Seahawks when others have not been, namely you. But the Lions have been on fire lately, and I think they're going to win this one. Not handily, but I think they're the better football team. So give me the Lions, lay the points.
You know what? Just because you said that, I'm picking the Seahawks to win outright. I had the Lions covering, but now I'm picking the Seahawks to win outright.
I like it.
I'm going to be their number 1 fan.
I like it. Bold strategy. I'll be happy. I'll be mad, but I'll also be a little happy for you if you get it right, because I know you've been hating on them a lot this year, but that's okay. We all got those few teams that we hate. One of those.
Yes, sir. And the Seahawks are mine.
One of those teams that most Steeler fans hate is playing host to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 1:00. The 3-3 Bucs traveling to Cincinnati to face the Bengals at 4-3. Bengals almost in free fall mode at this point, having lost the last 2 games. They're 3.5-point favorites at home, though. Are they going to be able to pull this one off?
I think they do. I think the Buccaneers aren't a very good team, so I'm going to pick the Bengals to cover. What do you got?
This is not a very logical pick because it's such a small line, but I'll pick the Buccaneers plus 3.5 for some reason. I have no good reason for it at all, but whatever. Jets at 3-4 at the Chicago Bears, who looked like contenders and now have all of a sudden fallen to 500, but they're getting 8 points at home against the rookie Sam Darnold. I'm going to go with the Bears to cover just because I think they turn it around this week against the rookie quarterback in Darnold, but I'm not a believer in Trubisky right now, so he is a wild card for sure.
I'm going to take the Jets plus the points. I don't really have a good reason because I still think the Jets are a pretty bad team. Like, they're not terrible, but they're just like kind of middle of the pack and bottom of the middle of the pack. But we're going to pick the Jets plus 8. Just Khalil Mack by himself kind of makes it so the Bears win. But like I feel like the Jets will keep it close.
The Baltimore Ravens, coming off a crushing loss to the Saints at home, now go to Carolina. Not a good matchup for them. The Panthers 4-2, but they are underdogs at home. Ravens getting 2 points. I really feel like the Ravens could win this one, but I am going to take Cam Newton. I think it was a very impressive win last week against the Eagles, and I think Cam has just been on fire lately, even though he kind of sleptwalked through the early part of the game. I think the Panthers are going to do just enough to win. I wanted to go Ravens plus 2, but that would be almost impossible, so I don't see that happening. So I'll just take the Panthers to win.
I'm going to actually take the Ravens to cover. I think their defense is going to overwhelm the Panthers, but like the Eagles' defense did in the beginning of the game last year. But the Ravens play a more complete game on defense every game they play, so I feel like I have more confidence in them winning, so I'm going to pick the Ravens to cover.
The Colts coming off a thrashing of the Bills, going to Oakland to face the 1-5 Raiders. Indy's getting 3 points in Oakland. Give me the Colts to win big. The Raiders now without Amari Cooper, and that team is heading south fast. It's heading south faster than the birds migrating south for the winter.
Oh, yeah. It's like you push them off a cliff, and they're just barreling towards the bottom of the land. Wherever they're going to land, it's towards the bottom. Colts cover easily.
The most disgusting game of the year, the 1-6 49ers led by C.J. Beathard against the Arizona Cardinals, also at 1-6, a coin flip game. Poor Josh Rosen playing a football game without an entire offensive line. I read that the Cardinals have not achieved 300 yards of total offense in a game yet this year. 300 yards. That's supposed to be easy now, and they can't even do that. Oh, man, oh, man. The Cardinals are in rough shape. Give me the 49ers to win on the road.
Give me the 49ers to win as well. The 49ers have actually been, even though at 1-6, they're outplaying what I've expected them to be. They kept games close that they shouldn't have, like against the Green Bay Packers. And it sort of like impressed me in that way that they're actually able to stay in games. So I thought at this point they would just be losing games by heavy margins. So they did lose last game by a heavy margin, but that was the Rams. I give them a pass because a lot of teams would lose like that to the Rams. So I'm going to have the 49ers to win right here.
Packers at Rams. Packers at 3-2-1. Rams at 7-0. The only undefeated team left. They're 9.5-point favorites at home. That's a large spread, and I get it, but that's just too much for me. Give me the Packers plus the points here.
I'm going to agree with you. That spread is way too big for an Aaron Rodgers-led team. I think that offense is just too hard to stop for the Packers, so I think that they're going to keep it close. But, the Rams are more complete, so they're still going to win.
Sunday Night Football, a rematch of the Minnesota Miracle game between the New Orleans Saints and the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings started slow but have come on a bit late. It's another coin flip game, third of the week. I'm going to take the Vikings to win this one. I think their momentum has really gotten them going, and I know the Saints have been better, winning 5 straight, but I don't know, something about the Vikings at home. I like them a little bit better, and I think the Saints are due for a slip-up game, and I think this is it. So give me the Vikings to win this one.
I'm going to pick the Saints to win. I've been like their little fanboy in this pick'em section for this entire year, and I'm going to keep that up. I think that the Saints win here because I'm not really a big fan of the Vikings this year. I really am not. Their defense hasn't performed as I had hoped it would. So I'm going to pick the Saints to win.
Monday Night Football. The New England Patriots travel to Buffalo to take on the Bills. New England is getting 14 points on the road. I would like to announce this as the end of the Buffalo Bills franchise as we know it. Rest in peace, Buffalo. The dates, October 28th, 1959, the Bills' inception. The franchise will be laid to rest on October 29th, 2018. The Bills are the worst team in professional football without Josh Allen. We have seen the last few weeks their ineptitude on so many different levels. And here, the Patriots, with Tom Brady, over the last, 7 games against the Bills, have scored an average of 35 points and have won by an average of 14 points. I don't see how there's any chance the Bills put up 10 points, let alone stop the Patriots from scoring 40. There's part of me that wants to pick this game to be the biggest blowout in NFL history. And by the way, the biggest blowout was the NFL championship game in 1940. The Bears won 73-0. There is part of me that wants to pick the Patriots to win by a score even bigger than that. I'm also going to be at attendance in this game. I am going to this game on Monday night. I get to witness a massacre firsthand, and I for one, am very excited for it. The 14-point spread is not nearly enough. Even for a team on the road, on prime time, it's not enough. Rest in peace, Buffalo Bills. 21,551 days is how long the Bills franchise will be in existence. They will be laid to rest on Monday night. Thank you.
I enjoyed that. I feel like I wish this game was on Halloween. That would have been so fitting for that. But 2 days off, and I'm going to pick the Patriots to cover for this one too. I think that the Bills are a really bad team. As you said, they are about to die. They are about to be smacked silly as hard as Tom Brady can. And Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and Josh Gordon, all of them are going to smack them as hard as they can. And the Patriots are just going to cover. I think I would have picked the Patriots to cover by 20. I say that. I think that I would have picked the Patriots to cover by 20. So, yeah.
Whew. That was a lot to get out. Some teams that are going to enjoy the view, like I'm going to enjoy the view, will be the Chargers, Titans, Cowboys, and Falcons because they're all off this week. Let's get into the bold predictions before we wrap this one up. Steelers and Browns, certainly a lot of big things happened in that Week 1 game. I certainly don't think a bold prediction of a tie would be that crazy, even given the fact that ties should be considered rare. So we're staying away from ties from our bold predictions, even though they happened in the last game. Give me yours, Austin. What are some big predictions that could happen in this one?
My first one is that there's going to be 8 sacks from the defense. My second one is that there's going to be 3 interceptions and a huge defensive showing. So 3 interceptions, 8 sacks, and then Smith-Schuster ends up with 2 touchdowns and 115 yards in this one. What are your bold predictions?
I think Chris Boswell's going to hit his first 50-plus yard field goal of the season. I think T.J. Watt has another huge game against the Browns, which maybe isn't a bold prediction, but I think he has 2.5 sacks, another forced fumble, and his first interception of the season. And I think Jesse James catches 2 touchdowns like he did in the season opener last season and goes over 75 receiving yards on the day. All right, so give me your final thoughts on the game. The Browns at 2-4-1 headed to Pittsburgh, coming off their bye at 3-2-1, the leaders of the AFC North. Steelers getting 8.5 points at home. What is going to happen here?
I think that the Steelers win and they win big. I feel like, it's always the second matchup with the Browns that the Steelers just end up smacking them in the past few years. And I think that the Steelers win 33-17 in this one, thus covering the 8.5-point spread. I just feel like the Steelers are the better team, and the Browns have changed a lot from the first time we met them. I mean, they're obviously losing one of their best linebackers. They don't have their starting safety. They changed quarterbacks. They don't have the same running back. They're just a bunch of they're a mess, and they don't even know if they want Todd Haley calling offensive plays. Hugh Jackson said he wanted to get involved. So that sounds like a problem to me. If you're getting Hugh Jackson more involved, it sounds like you're going to lose that. So I'm going to pick the Steelers to win 33-17 and cover. What do you have?
You know, Mike Tomlin's Steelers have traditionally in the past been good in the first game coming off of a bye week. But I'd like to point out that the last 4 years, going back to 2014, the Steelers are just 1-3 in the game after the bye week. In 2014, the Steelers lost 35-32 to the Saints in a game that was not as close as the score indicates. In 2015, they lost to the Seahawks on the road 39-30 in a game where Russell Wilson threw 5 touchdowns. In 2016, the Steelers went to Baltimore and lost 21-14, where the offense was virtually non-existent. Actually, the first season, or first game rather, that we had a podcast for, that I'd like to point that out. And then last year, the Steelers came away with the win. In rather unspectacular fashion, they looked like garbage for 3 quarters before they came out with the win against the Colts in the final seconds as Chris Boswell hit the game winner. So, what am I trying to get with all this? I think the Steelers have come out of the gate slow in some of those games. They've been kind of rusty, and I think that's going to happen again here. But talent will win out. The Steelers will win this game. It'll be close, but they will win this game. They'll do enough to come away with the victory. And I think they're going to win by a final score of 27-21. So I'll take the Browns +8 in this one. +8.5. The Steelers move to 4-2-1 on the season. So give me the Steelers in this one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for joining us today on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. We always appreciate your listenership and viewership. And if you have any questions about the show, feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. And we have all of our links and usernames for our social media will be listed below in our description. So, as always, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a terrific night.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.